from Sydney to Seoul, from London to Rome. We pay the wages that build dreams and homes. It's data, it's tech, it's strategy too. It's complex, it's vital, it's built for...
Remote is on a mission to create opportunity everywhere by making it simple for companies to find, hire, manage, and pay teams anywhere. Founded in 2019 by Job van der Voort and Marcelo Labra, Remote combines deep local expertise with a unified HR and payroll platform built for compliance, security, and ease of use. Remote's all-in-one solution enables organizations to onboard international employees and contractors without needing to establish local entities, simplifying global expansion. Remote combines payroll, benefits, compliance, and HR management into a single platform, giving businesses greater control and visibility across their workforce. With a strong focus on compliance and employee experience, it supports organizations in navigating complex local regulations while ensuring timely, accurate payments. For growing businesses, Remote provides a scalable way to build and manage distributed teams with confidence. Remote is backed by leading investors including SoftBank, Excel, Sequoia, Index Ventures, Two Sigma Ventures, General Catalyst, and B Capital. Find out more at remote.com.
Welcome everyone. We have a lot to cover today and a very specific reason to cover it now. In exactly 37 days, the EU Pay Transparency Directive goes live. For anyone in this room running payroll across borders or planning to, that deadline changes things. Before we look into it, quick intros. Vic, Nikki, who are you and what does your day-to-day look like?
So I'm Vic and I am the Director for Payroll Strategy and Compliance at Remote. So I look after everything from incident management, risk management, compliance, audit and payroll and product strategy at Remote. And what does my day-to-day look like? I mean, everything from reviewing an audit to helping to prioritize our product roadmap. Yeah, it's broad and diverse.
Amazing.
Hi. I look after the operational risk side of global strategy and compliance. So that's risk management, incident response, crisis management, making sure that when legislations change, we catch those edge cases and before they become payroll issues for employees. So Vic sets the strategy. I'm usually the one that finds out where it breaks in practice.
Amazing. So the strategist and the operator, let's start with the question that's on everyone's mind, AI and automation in payroll. But I want to keep this tight because where we really need to spend time today is what's coming on June 7th. Okay, so there's a lot of excitement around AI in payroll, automating calculations, flagging anomalies, speeding up processing. But when you're running payroll across multiple countries, where does AI fall short? Over to you, Vic.
Yep, sure. So AI is amazing at volume and pattern recognition. So if you give it 10,000 rows of data, it will spot those anomalies quicker than any human can. But global payroll, cross-border compliance, we all know it's not driven by patterns, right? It's driven by exceptions, very, very country and regional, local tax rules, CBAs, CLAs, union agreements, statutory requirements. None of these are standard. They are inherently non-standard. They are complex and very, very specific and particular. AI learns from models. Payroll compliance lives in the exception of those models. And I think that that is where the challenge with AI and global payroll comes in.
Yeah, that's right. That's where we see it go wrong in real life. The system wants to automate a deduction, but it's wrong and then nobody catches it because the automation ran through cleanly. So everyone assumes that it's fine. But it only really surfaces later when maybe an auditor is asking for the audit trail and there isn't a clean audit trail because the data's moved from systems by email or through spreadsheets. The chain of custody broke somewhere along that line.
Yeah, key point there, Nikki. Like at scale, I think the formula is simple. Automation handles the volume, local expertise handles the exceptions. I think you need both. I don't think there's a world, definitely not imminently, where AI solves for everything. I think one without the other creates risk. Because where even we say AI can't handle the local expertise, we know when humans handle the volume work, the repetitive work, we introduce the risk of human error. So I think one without the other creates risk, and I think the two together is the perfect formula. And then I think there's a second layer to that, which is around 1 in 4 employees want visibility into how their deductions are calculated. And if your system can produce a number but is not able to explain how it got to that number, then it's not really a solution, because people want education, they want to understand, and therefore it becomes a liability for you.
That's right. And that's exactly the direction that regulators are moving in. So like now the question isn't just how did you pay people correctly? Is it right? But it's also, can you show me how you got to that outcome? It's a bit like, doing a maths paper. You don't just need the right answer. You need to show your calculations too. And that's going to be the more important question.
Okay, amazing. So definitely the perfect setup for where we need to spend the bulk of our today's session. And let's talk about cross-border compliance. Okay, so we've established that automation alone won't save you. Let's talk about what actually goes wrong when you're running payrolls across border, and where does compliance break in practice?
So it usually breaks in the handoffs when data's moving between systems, from a HRIS system to a payroll system, and then from payroll into a finance or accounting system. That's where those breakages happen, because there's still handoffs happening in emails, through spreadsheets, or manual re-entry from like Slack or Teams, or any other system. But every one of those creates a point where the chain of custody can break. And when an auditor comes in, the first question usually isn't about the numbers, it's about the trail.
Yeah, that is exactly right, Nikki. And I think that is where we see over and over again where companies tend to fall apart, is in that audit trail. A really simple example, a salary change is approved on March 15th. HR updates the system, emails payroll picks it up 2 days later, re-enters it manually into the software. Now multiply that across 10, 15, 20 countries. The audit trail becomes a series of emails and spreadsheets. Then when an auditor shows up, the problem isn't the calculation, it's the lack of a clean and easy way to trace that chain of events. And I think that's where most audit findings actually come from.
And the pace that regulatory change is happening, it makes it harder. So, for example, in Australia, the payday super moves contributions from quarterly to every payday. And that means there's so much less room for, that's okay, we'll fix it later. The broader pattern that we're seeing a lot more in markets is we need to address this as it happens.
Amazing. Well, thank you. So let's talk about the sharpest example of this right now. We are 37 days from the EU Pay Transparency Directive going live. Vic, for the UK leaders here, why does an EU regulation matter to them?
Well, UK leaders watching this, they should not assume that Brexit is going to shield them here. If you've got employees in Dublin, Berlin, Amsterdam, even a small minimal presence, then this will apply to you in 37 days' time. The key difference here is UK gender pay gap reporting is aggregated and retrospective. The EU directive is individualised very detailed, and it reverses the burden of proof. If an employee identifies a pay gap, it's no longer on them as it was previously to prove that discrimination. It's on you as an employer to prove with objective and with gender neutral data why there is a gap there.
That's right. So under the old rules, the proving discrimination was the employee's problem. It was their burden. But under the new rules now, it's going to be yours, the employer's. So if an employee identifies a gap, you would need to prove with objective gender neutral data why that gap exists.
And importantly as well, actually, they negotiated a better salary is not a valid defence. That won't save you there. So it challenges a core assumption many companies have relied on for a long time. The pay outcomes can be justified informally through a conversation, she said, he said, and this directive stops that. It's no longer possible. So, Niki, what good looks like here, I think, is actually quite clear. You need a pay framework where every band is defined, gender neutral criteria. There's no wiggle room, no room for debate, and the logic behind where every individual sits within it is sound. And that framework needs to exist before an employee asks the question, not in response to it.
100%, yes. So operationally, if an EU employee requests their pay level compared to the average by, for example, sex, you've got 2 months to respond. You can't start looking at, after they've asked, but especially if your data is split over multiple systems, you need to get that all together at the beginning. If your system can't pull the data together in a very short time, then you're exposed the moment somebody queries this. And the financial exposure snowballs, right? So if an employee was underpaid, let's say 8,000 a year, but for 3 years, that's 24,000 in back pay plus interest. So that's one person. These issues usually affect more than one person. It's rare for it to only be one person. So it very quickly can snowball. And the gap the directive is designed to close is already visible in data that we have access to. So our 2026 report found that 78% of men are satisfied with their salary, but for women, it was only 69%. That's a 9-point gap. So the current regime says that if an employee identifies a gap, they have to prove that it's discriminatory. But under the new rules, you, the employer, have to prove it isn't. Again, with objective, documented evidence. So, like you said, if your pay framework can't produce the evidence, you're exposed the moment somebody asks.
Over to you, Vic.
So when you look at this directive and the broader global trends, there are 4 consequences that most companies most certainly haven't fully planned for. The first is back pay is historical. So fixing an issue going forward isn't enough. Liability accrues from the point the underpayment began. So if you're modelling compliance purely as a forward-looking cost rather than fixing what you've done historically, then you're hugely underestimating your exposure there.
Yeah, and every month that you delay an audit in any jurisdiction, right, it's another month where you're accruing the liability. You can't see it yet. Obviously, as a risk manager, the advice would be you need to know what the problems are.
Okay, so second surprise is wide salary bands can backfire hugely on you. I've already seen this happen before. So posting a job advert saying that we are paying for this role somewhere in the range of 50,000 to 120,000 euro range might make you feel like you're being a great flexible employer on paper. But once an employee sees where they sit within that range, it creates questions and most likely renegotiation pressure. And without a documented framework to explain those differences on why one individual might fall at 60,000 euro in that banding, but somebody else falls at 100,000 euro, that's going to become very difficult for you to manage.
Right. So ranges, they go live and quickly people teams, HR teams, they start getting questions about why an employee is sitting at the lower end of it, of the band. And if you can't back up the decisions with a documented framework, there's no clear answer to give. The problem, it can show up in any market where headcount is growing faster than pay structures are standardized.
Right, and that's amplified across markets as well. Employee expectations are not standard, so what feels transparent in one country can often feel really unclear in another. And again, working in a global organization, you can see very clearly how that clarity looks very different culturally, let's say from Spain versus the US, for example. So it's not just about defining the framework, it's about being able to explain that in a way that resonates locally, as well as having that global framework. So third surprise is the offer conversation can change significantly. So in markets where salary ranges must be disclosed up front and you have to be crystal clear, like EU and multiple US states as well, candidates already know that band. The question becomes, why am I at this point in the range? So if your recruiters, your TA team don't have a clear documented answer for that, that creates a pretty significant risk for you in terms of your hiring process, but also future compliance risk as well.
Yeah, and it's not just enough to, update the job posting. You need to update the conversation around it, those talking points, the rationale, and the criteria for where somebody would be placed in a band. So if a recruiter can't explain that clearly and consistently, the candidate will walk away or accept the offer and then challenge it later. But by that point, you're already bordering non-compliance.
Right, absolutely. And the fourth surprise, I think, is managers are now directly in scope. So when pay questions arise, employees go to their line manager first. If the manager can't explain the decision using the objective criteria or relies on informal reasoning that I mentioned earlier, that creates exposure to you as a business. So manager enablement is no longer just a people issue that you need to worry about. It's essentially it becomes part of your compliance.
It is, yeah. Getting managers ready for these conversations is a core part of compliance now, especially for a country cross-border operationally. A lot of exposure comes from what gets said in one-to-one conversations. It's hardest to control. So when a manager doesn't have a clear answer or a well-supported answer, that's where you're further exposed.
And this is not just a European story, if you like, either. So I think it's important to zoom out. So regulatory pressure increases globally. Niki, you and I see this in our work every single day. We work over across more than 100 countries, and we see this increasing. The specifics may vary quite a bit country to country, but the direction is becoming more and more consistent. You have to be more transparent. You have to be faster at reporting. We see more and more countries introducing a similar system to UK today, so the real-time reporting and much less tolerance for delay and excuses. But at the same time, employee expectations I feel are really moving in the same direction. So transparency doesn't just mean a compliance issue anymore. It becomes a retention factor for your global workforce.
Yeah, 90% of employees globally say they want pay transparency and it's important to them. 56% would consider leaving if concerns went undressed. So it's not, just as you said, just not a regulatory risk. It's a retention risk. And companies that can answer these pay questions clearly in every market, they're going to be the ones retaining the talent.
Yeah, absolutely. So the regulation and the workforce expectation are pointing in the same direction. So let's talk about what staying safe actually looks like.
Well, I don't think the answer here is to slow down. I think it's to build the right guardrails. We do a lot of this in our work every day, Nikki and I, looking at the guardrails in place. And when your systems are connected properly between HRIS to payroll, utilising things such as API, the audit trail creates itself. You're always going to have version history. Every data change will be time-stamped. You can have multi-level approval flows, so you'll always have an approval record there and a clear lineage for all of those events. So there's no spreadsheets and emails like we discussed earlier. There's no re-entry. There's no gaps there.
Yeah, I think annual compliance reviews are too slow for the environment that we're in at the moment. We need more regular audit cycles and we need governance that connects payroll and legal and finance. So if a payroll risk lives in a silo, it usually means that nobody's managing it end to end. We all need to work together here.
And for anybody who hasn't started yet, the priority is absolutely to get your pay frameworks documented and audit ready. And don't wait another 3 months to do it. Do it now. Whether you're in scope for the EU directive or you're not, it's a structural shift in how pay needs to be managed moving forward. It's absolutely the direction that we see going globally. So as I say, even if you are not in scope for the EU directive right now, this may well be coming to you soon. So I definitely would not wait. I think organisations that treat it that way need to prepare themselves for the questions that will come to them. The ones that treat it as a documentation exercise are going to run straight into these issues later.
That's right. We need to train managers now. We need to build the data infrastructure now for the reporting, for regulators, against their expectations, and then also anticipate what's coming after this. Employees are increasingly expecting it too. So if we only start building all of this into place when the regulation comes into effect, we're kind of already behind. Your first report's going to be incomplete, and really, I think we need to start now.
Amazing. Well, we've covered a lot on the ground. There's definitely plenty more to unpack. And next we'll move to more of a Q&A style section. I'll ask a few of the most common payroll questions that we hear, and you'll both share your perspectives. So based off what we've just discussed, how does all of it affect companies with only contractors, not employees in the EU? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can go. So if a company only has genuine contractors, the directive today is less aimed at them. But the main rights and the reporting duties, they're built around employees and workers. So there's always going to be that first question of classification. So are they actual genuine contractors under local law? And then the second question is the broader expectation around transparency, what people want, the documentation. It is still moving in the same direction. So yes, today the legal position might be different, but the discipline should still be there.
Vicky, you got anything to add on that one?
Now, I'm completely aligned with Niki. I think the risk starts to creep in practice. You need to really focus on misclassification and be aware that your expectations don't stop as an employer just at employment status.
Okay.
And people's, whether they're a worker, employee, or contractor, their expectations for pay transparency is all going to be the same.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, so on to the next. In terms of minimum headcount, is there a minimum headcount threshold when it comes to reporting?
The directive sets the thresholds based on employee count per legal entity within the EU, and that per legal entity is important to remember, is not per company. So if you're a global company and you have 5 entities that fall within this, then you would have to report per entity. So companies with 250 plus employees need to report annually. Companies with 150 to 249 employees report every 3 years initially. And then from 2031, that will extend to companies with 100 or more employees. But I'll add that reporting thresholds are not the same as compliance thresholds. So the right to request pay information applies regardless of company size. So even if you fall under that 250 or that 150 threshold for the reporting requirements, you still need to be able to provide the information to any employee request that you get about pay transparency.
That's right. And just because it's not today for you doesn't mean you can't start getting ready.
Cool. Thank you. So on to the next. In terms of handling pay equity across roles, how do you handle the pay equity across roles that aren't directly comparable?
So I think this is where companies often get stuck. And it's a really good conversation. Niki and I have been having this discussion a lot lately when it comes to defining this across roles. But I think the directive actually makes this quite clear. It's not about identical roles. It's about work of equal value. So the starting point is a structured job architecture, and I think that's one of the key things, key places that you can invest in as an organisation right now. You need to have a defined criteria, so skills, responsibilities, impact, working conditions, all of that, and really defining that will allow you to evaluate roles consistently across your org. What we found is that actually helps so much more with your hiring process as well, because it gives candidates that clarity and transparency right from day one about what the job is, what it looks like, what their benefits will be, and things like that. And once you've got that, you're not comparing job titles per se. You're comparing roles based on the objective factors. And the key is that the methodology is documented and it's applied consistently across your business. Because when you get questioned about it, the answer isn't, well, these roles feel similar. It's, here's the framework that we used, here's how we measure it, here's how the roles were assessed against it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say, that if you can't explain and defend why 2 roles are not the same or comparable, then you're not going to be able to defend your decision making here.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I guess, looping back to the first 2 questions that we run through, that if things are structured, documented, the framework's in place, it doesn't matter what the headcount is, what the type of employee is in terms of their contracts, the structures are there, the framework's in there, everything is going to run smoother and more compliantly for everyone, let's say. Okay, so in terms of tools or systems, what would you say that we should be evaluating right now?
I would focus less on specific tools and more on capabilities, because that's where most people are going to find their systems will fall short. So there are three things that, as far as I am concerned, that you need. And that, first of all, that's data integration. So you want to make sure that your HRIS, your payroll, and your finance systems can all be connected, ideally via API, but you can also explore things like SFTP if API isn't available. And the goal there is to remove the manual moving of data, which is less than ideal anyway, because it introduces risk. But it then gives you that documented audit trail that you ideally want and need. Second, auditability. Every single change needs to be time-stamped, an approval record, that clear lineage that I spoke about before. If you can't trace a single change end to end, then that's where you're introducing that risk to your business. And I think third is reporting and explainability. So you need to be able to produce pay comparisons, breakdowns by gender, and explain individual positioning without a band, quickly, easily. And if a system can process payroll but can't support those three things, it's not going to give you what you need where this regulation is going.
Thanks, Vic. Nikki, is there anything else to add on that one?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Vic covered all the points. I think most importantly, your systems need to show what changed, when it changed, and why it changed.
Cool, thank you. So last question here from me at this stage. So how do you run a pay audit when your data is fragmented across multiple different providers?
Do you want to take that, Nikki?
So I would take the fragmentation issue as one of the first findings. If you have to manually put together information from multiple systems just to get a basic view, that already tells you that something's wrong. I'd start by mapping out the systems, the owners, those handoff points, and then build a single data set from there. So the point of the audit is not just to find the gaps, but it's also to see, where your process is too fragmented and to give a clear answer when somebody asks.
I feel like this topic excites you, Nikki. This is what gets you up in the morning.
Well, that's the job, right? Where does the process work and where doesn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. Vic?
Consolidation is my answer here. When you've got data living everywhere, you need to bring it all into a single place, don't you? Like if you're trying to audit and you're going bit by bit, then there's gonna be things that slip through the cracks. So I think consolidation, bring everything into one place, and standardize. Titles, currency, everything that you're working with in that data set, standardize. It will make it much more simple and clean. And I think after that, validation. So before you analyze anything, you need to be confident that you can trust the data that you've got. Usually, unfortunately, that means reconciling across multiple systems, something that Nikki's done in her sleep for the last few months. Because we're very compliance driven at Remote. And so we like to make sure that we've not got the gaps that we know we see quite a lot when new customers are coming to us. So yeah, reconciling across systems, identifying any gaps or inconsistencies in your data. And I think once you've done those two critical steps, then you can think about running your audit.
Cool, thank you. So to close, what is, I guess, one thing each of you think every payroll leader in this room should do this quarter?
Look at your systems and processes. Invest time in it. Everybody always thinks, I hear this all the time at all the events that we're at and the conversations that you're having with payroll leaders, we've not got the time right now, we're focusing on scale, we've not got the resource, etc. It's on the plan for next year. No, not next year. let's do it now. Like, make the space for it, because it's more important now than it ever will be for your business.
I guess it becomes very reactive, and then sometimes it's too late, the problems are already there, and you're then chasing your tail. Whereas if you can be proactive with these things and get ahead of it, you'll probably thank yourself in the long run.
Always. So many businesses operate reactively in payroll, and you really don't need to. I think people would be surprised. It's the old coaching term, right, Alex? You'll be familiar with this. You need to slow down to speed up. And I think most people would be surprised by allowing themselves that space to just stop and shift from reactive to proactive, how much quicker it will make everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely relate, for sure. What about yourself, Niki?
Everything that we spoke about today, but if I had to focus on one thing this quarter, it would be building that chain of custody into your systems now. If an auditor asks, for you to reconstruct 6 months worth of data, and it's going to take you a few days to do it, that's already an issue. The goal is to build the trail now, so that when the questions come, you can generate the answers rather than rebuild that reporting from scratch.
Amazing. Okay, so a few practical recommendations. We'll start with yourself, Vic. What have you got for us?
Practical recommendations in terms of what to do?
Yes.
I would start off by looking at your data set. Like, where does your data live?
Mm-hmm.
Have you got data in 20 different places? If you have, you've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my number one tip. I would also look at your hiring strategy and your performance management strategy. Is it explicitly clear to even yourself? Like, I can question myself. Am I clear on what the expectations of my role are, what my role level is, how my compensation package is made up as a leader? If I'm not, probably my team are not as well. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I guess getting, everything documented and I guess in place and audit ready before June 7th. I guess companies that are treating this as a structural change to how pay works will be ready for the questions that follow, and the ones that treat it as a documentation exercise will meet the 4 surprises on the other side. Niki, have you got a practical recommendation at all?
I'd still echo the same. Practically, make sure that you can follow that trail through from start to end. Build in those chains of custodies and preempt that this pay transparency is growing. We're going in that direction. And of course, make sure your documentation is in place. That will be one of the hardest, because you may be delivering a decision or news that somebody doesn't want to hear, and you are going to have to defend it. And just because you can defend it because you have the documentation also doesn't mean the recipient of that is going to welcome it.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we are ready to close the session. Thank you so much to the audience. It directs us to the 2026 State of Global Payroll Report for the underlying data. Thank you.